Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to reintroduce to you now. Maria Emmerich is a returning guest on our show. Be sure to check out her first appearance on episode 572 of Boundless Body Radio. Maria Emmerich is a nutritionist who specializes in the ketogenic diet and exercise physiology. Maria's expertise has sent her around the world speaking about ketogenic diets. She spends most of her time with clients around the world, specializing in helping autoimmune disorders, diabetes, heart disease, cholesterol issues, alopecia, Hashimoto's, cancer, epilepsy, seizures, depression, and anxiety. She is also an international best-selling author of several books, including Keto, the Carnivore Cookbook, and the 30-Day Ketogenic Cleanse. She also authored dozens of other books, including several cookbooks and nutritional guides, alongside her husband, Craig, who we hosted on episode 478 of Boundless Body Radio. Some of her readers include Valerie Bertinelli, Al Roker, and Halle Berry, and she contributes to Halle's site on a regular basis. Maria has helped millions of people with her books and coaching to lose weight and regain their health utilizing a low-carbohydrate approach. You can find Maria on her website at www.ketomaria.com. Despite stumbling through your introduction, Maria, welcome back to Boundless Body Radio. It's such an honor to host you.
It's always a pleasure to be here. You're such a bundle of joy. I love it.
Well, you are fantastic. And I think it's amazing that we can all have different opinions on lots of things in the nutritional space. And, we can disagree about certain things, but everybody that I talk to just absolutely adores you. They love your work. All of my clients are super jealous that I get to chat with you today and, make sure you ask her about this and ask her about that. And I think it's wonderful that, again, we can get into the weeds on lots of stuff and people can disagree, but you're just one of the most beloved people in the community. You and Craig are just absolutely looked up to. And so on behalf of everybody, are just enamored with all of you guys.
You're very sweet. I don't know. I always thought, but thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. You're calling in today from Wisconsin, and it is good time for you because you're actually a bow hunter.
I am a bow hunter, so I've been living in the deer stand.
How much time? So I've never done hunting myself. It's always something that I've wanted to try, being a carnivore for 6.5 years now. I feel a bit hypocritical that I've never taken my own animal and eaten my own animal, and it's always something I would want to do. I'd have a tough time with it. But how long do you have to track these animals before you can comfortably take one out?
Well, a long time. I mean, obviously a bit of luck goes into it, but I'm lucky enough to just like go out my front door and hunt, where when I was younger, we would have to go to, we'd have to ask somebody to hunt on their land, and we have to drive an hour to get there. And so it was kind of like a weekend thing only. But here, every day I'm out there, we have stands. We have about 80 acres and we have stands everywhere. So I can kind of pick depending on the wind and stuff. But it takes, by the time a deer gets close enough to you, in order to have a good safe shot, you don't want to be doing just shooting to shoot. You want to be really responsible about it. I've been out there a lot and I haven't had a chance yet. Not the right one either.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then you will also harvest the meat. How much meat do you get, and what is deer meat even like? I don't know that I've ever had venison.
You harvest the whole thing. I mean, I did take a deer a few weeks ago, I'll say that. And you even take the heart out, right? And that actually went to my dog because she loves it very much. But yeah, depending on how big the deer is, you have lots of meat, a whole freezer full. But it also depends on where you shoot it too, because you could ruin quite some good meat. Luckily, this last shot was really perfect, where nothing was ruined at all.
Wow. Sounds like such a fun hobby, and one that gives you a commodity at the end of the day. You actually get some food at the end of it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's not out of pride. It's out of, we honor that deer. We thank it, for giving its life to my family. So it's not anything in vain. I just want people to know that.
Yeah, that's kind of the experience I would be wanting to have as well, to feel what it's like to take another life and like be connected to that animal, and know that me and my family would have life because of the life that you take. So that's cool that you do it in that very respectful way. I really admire that. That's wonderful. Lots of different things.
I just want to say we have so many deer here that if you didn't have hunters, they're going to get hit by car, there's starvation. And there's so many deer right now. I have 12 deer tags.
Wow.
And so it's important to have hunters. It's called a limiting factor. Otherwise, they're going to die of something terrible or hurt somebody in a car accident. So
that's a great point. Yeah, I've heard they can be quite invasive up there.
Yeah. There's a lot.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, that's cool. Again, lots of different things I want to talk to you about today. Maybe we'll have some hot takes about something. But before we do, it's been 2 years since you've been on. Can you remind us how you got into the ketogenic space to begin with? This is not your first rodeo. You've been in the space for quite a while and calling balls and strikes for quite a long time.
Well, it was almost 29 years ago. I was not feeling well, so I went to my family doctor and she told me I had something called PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. And she said, you probably can't have your own children. I also was giving 3 very powerful drugs. I had depression, I had IBS, I had acid reflux, and I didn't want to take those prescriptions. And so I looked into what causes PCOS. There wasn't the internet back then, but it's very clear that it's excess caffeine, sugar, and carbohydrates. And I worked at a coffee shop where I'd go to this coffee shop before high school and I'd make the scones and the muffins and cinnamon rolls at like 4 a.m. And then I'd go to school. After school, I'd go back to the coffee shop and whatever didn't sell, I got to go home with. So I'm talking like Seinfeld, the muffin tops. Like I just had all the things. And that was my dinner. That's what I lived off of. And if somebody would have told me, and this is why I get a lot of, I think, judgment from the carnivore community because I have recipes for everything. But if somebody would have told me at 16 that you can only eat meat, I would have never tried. So for me, it was creating my favorite things like cinnamon rolls into these protein, sugar-free, type delicious pieces of goodness. So I like to meet people where they're at. If it's taking baby steps and like getting them away from sugar, I think that's a really nice way to go. But that's how I started, and that's why I think I was able to stay on it for 29 years. I don't feel like I'm missing out because I have a recipe for everything.
Yeah, and you've been doing it again for so long that you're able to kind of modify those recipes and make them really accessible for people. Tell us about the process of kind of creating your first like recipes, cookbook, that sort of thing.
Um, well, what happened was I was married before I could legally drink alcohol. And I went to school for nutrition and exercise physiology, but I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. That was my plan. And so we started adopting children because Craig's awesome and he was totally open to that. And about halfway into the adoption, Craig lost his job. And I was just a rock climbing guide making $8 an hour. I didn't have insurance. Everything was through him. And so when you have the main income go away, your whole adoption, all the money you put into it goes back to zero. And someone in town, her name's Jamie, she said, Maria, you're going to start a blog. I was like, what's a blog? This was when blogs just started. And she said, and you're going to write a book, put all of your recipes in, because everybody kind of knew I was really creative with these recipes. She's like, you're going to put them into a book, sell them at the YMCA, at the communities, people will buy it. And so I did that. And before you know it, like my latest book was with Halle Berry. Like, what the heck? I couldn't believe, but that's how it all started. I literally had to ride my bicycle to the library to write because I was so poor, I didn't even own a computer or
Wow,
a car. We had to sell our cars too.
wow, wow, that's such a cool journey. Tell us about your experience at school. Like you writing about ketogenic diets, did that go directly against some of the training that you had when you were getting your degree?
Yeah. So, very interesting story. It must have been 10, 15 years ago. The university I graduated from reached out. They said, you're so successful. We'd like you to speak at this big event. And I was like, okay, I want you to know before I get there that my presentation is going to basically say most of the stuff you taught me is lies. And they said, okay, maybe you shouldn't come. But I wanted to be open and I wanted them to know like the stuff you taught me, the 7 to 11 grains, that's what kept me sick. So
Yeah. When you initially changed your diet, did all of those things resolve for you? And what were and maybe other like surprising things that got better for you?
I didn't think about the acid reflux, that just went away. I didn't think about my depression or like my moods would get better, but they certainly did right away within that first week. And I'm not telling anybody to get off antidepressant, but I think food is very powerful. I know it is. Um, Weight loss took a while. I think it was because I was using dairy as a crutch. I ate a lot of cheese and nuts. And once I got rid of those, the weight started to come off. And when I was a teenager, I remember being at home ec class and the teacher saying, "You will never be skinny. You are big boned. You will always be heavy."
Wow.
So, yeah, I think I just wanted to prove everybody wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, you've proven that for a long time. You've been able to kind of maintain a healthy lifestyle, and again, writing about it for so many years. How has your thinking around ketogenic diets changed and evolved over time? As you look back on like the cookbooks you write, eventually transitioning into the writing about carnivore, whether you do perfect carnivore diet now today or not, I think is irrelevant. But like, how has your thinking around a ketogenic diet changed over time?
Oh my gosh, tremendously. Um, so for me, long time ago, in order to have success with weight loss and healing, I needed to focus on a high protein, low fat approach. And then about, I don't know if it was 10 years ago, a lot of people are like, oh, too much protein turns into sugar and you need high fat to have higher ketones. And I understood how more fat would cause higher ketones, but I didn't know then at the time that that doesn't make any difference when it comes to health or weight loss. Unless somebody has seizures or epilepsy where I want the ketones higher, maybe Alzheimer's. Majority of people that want to do keto, it's for weight loss, or carnivore, it's for weight loss. And higher ketones mean nothing. It just means you ate a bunch of fat and you have a lot of fuel in your bloodstream at that time. So aiming for a high keto number, I know now is not the goal, but I did succumb to that for a while. And I was like, why is nobody getting better anymore? And then I went back to my roots and maybe even more so with higher protein.
Got it. Okay, so we'll park that. I really want to talk about that. But where do you fall now as far as either tracking food or tracking ketones? You mentioned like epilepsy or seizures. Are those the really only people that need to track either of those things? Like, how do you think about tracking again, either your food intake, maybe the calorie expenditure, and or like actually tracking ketones or glucose or any of those other things?
I think everybody should know their macros. I think everybody should count their macros. I mean, people that are coming to me, it's not because they're like, oh, I just want to lose 10 pounds. It's because of they need to heal something, right? And so Craig and I do their macros for them, and we suggest that they stick to them. And then they're not going to change that much throughout time because it's based off of your lean mass. And the way I help people lose weight is you don't lose your lean mass. You're going to maintain that. And if anything, the calories could go up too. But calories, of course, they matter.
Yeah. Okay. When you're setting somebody's macronutrients, you mentioned lean mass for setting protein. How are you generally speaking? Obviously, this is going to vary, but the three macronutrients: carbohydrates, fats, proteins. What are you thinking when you're trying to help somebody get those like established?
Well, I tell them protein is a goal. You have to hit that. You can go over that. Fat is a maximum. Don't go over that. Carbs is a maximum. Don't go over that. And even if somebody wants to do carnivore, you're still going to get carbs in eggs and scallops and organ meat. There's carbs and things. So too, we want to keep that to a maximum.
Got it. Okay. That's kind of the way I'd be thinking about it as well. And you mentioned setting the protein based on lean mass. What kind of numbers, again, just kind of generally speaking, are the common one that you hear from most people is like maybe like 1 gram per pound of lean mass. Is that about kind of what you would set for somebody?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that's ideal. Yeah. And some
Got it.
people do or ideal body mass, but I think focusing on lean mass is what we want to do.
Okay, got it. This becomes such a point of contention, and everybody talks about this as a ratio, the fat to protein ratio. And I know you're so good at talking about this. Do we want to be thinking about it solely as a ratio of the two, or should they be like certain amounts that we're looking for? Again, you're thinking about fat as a maximum and protein as a minimum. I agree with you there, but everybody's talking about like the fat to protein ratio. How much do you think about that as far as the ratio itself?
If you focus on percentages or ratios, you're going to fail
Mm,
because they're not taking into part. Don't focus on percentages. Focus on your personal, how much protein you need to get in a day, and then using fat as a lever. So if your goal is to lose weight, and I just say that because 99% of people, they might have another goal, but weight loss is one. And so fat, we're going to use as a lever. if you are, 100 pounds overweight, that fat dial, let your body fat make the ketones. You don't need to eat it. And so that fat dial is going to be lower. Once they reach their body goal, we're going to bring that fat dial up. Like I can get away with quite a bit of fat because I don't have a lot on my body for fuel. But when someone is overweight, you don't want to consume too much.
Yeah, got it. Okay. Now I wanted to ask you about signs and symptoms of having not enough and having too much, in particular with fat and protein. So I'm going to start with protein. How would somebody know that somebody is not getting enough protein and they need to eat more?
Hair loss. I think that's like a big one. Everybody's like, not everybody, a lot of people come to me, I tried keto and I lost all my hair and that type of stuff. And I would say, well, you probably were doing too much fat and not enough protein. So hair loss is one, muscle loss can be another one. So there's so many unnoticeable things that happen with not enough protein. So your heart tissue is a protein. It's made up of proteins. Your liver is made up of proteins. Every part of your body is a building blocks of protein. It needs amino acids, right? That's why you need to consume them. If you don't consume enough, it's going to use your muscle mass to get amino acids from to rebuild your heart tissue, which is always turning over. It doesn't stop turning over. Your liver's always turning over. Your skin is always turning over. So it needs to rebuild those so you can live and you don't die. So I'd rather have people maintain their muscle mass. Here's another, a lot of people are on GLP-1s. And one of the last presentations I gave, someone asked a question at the end about what do you think about GLP-1s? And I said, well, it has been found that you can lose up to 50% of lean mass as you lose weight. And obviously there's ways you can combat that. But when you don't have an appetite, the last thing you want to do is eat a steak, right? And so I fear that a lot of muscle loss will happen. And then when you stop them, you are more, because it's made for, type 2 diabetes in the beginning, you are more type 2 diabetic because you have less lean mass. The whole way to reverse insulin resistance is to gain or at least maintain your muscle as you lose fat and shrink the fat cells. And those are kind of doing the complete opposite. And a few people, not just one, came up to me afterwards and said, Dr. So-and-so, which you and I both know, put them on a GLP-1 and they needed more insulin because they lost so much lean mass.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. Wow, that's super interesting. So we do know that protein is very satiating, and we know that this is a huge challenge for people. I mean, I think most people like who are not aware of how much protein they're intaking are probably intaking a pretty embarrassingly low amount of protein. But when you eat that steak, you do get quite full and you tend to stay satiated. You see people intermittent fasting, not because they're trying to, but because it's really easy, it's very convenient. And then it becomes this question of like, how are we going to get somebody who's feeling full all the time and is very satiated with protein? How are we going to get them sufficient amounts of protein to be able to hit that? Do you find that to be a challenge?
Yes, because I help people with protein sparing modified fasting, and they say I can't eat it. I can't eat that much protein. I'm so full. So when you specifically, if you want to increase your appetite, add another macro to it. So if you're just eating protein, it's hard to eat enough. But if you add fat or carbohydrates to it, your appetite will go up.
Got it. Okay.
Kind
Yeah,
of like
that's
a
true.
low sugar diet thing. That's why that worked.
Yeah. Can you explain that for people who are confused about that? Because you hear that term being thrown around. And like, I thought it was a joke when it first came out.
I did too. Yeah. Um, I guess I don't want to get into the science of it that much, but when you're only focusing on one macronutrient, fat fasting, sugar diet, protein sparing modified fasting, if you're focusing on just one macro, you're going to lose weight because your appetite is so low, you're not getting enough calories to maintain your mass.
Yeah, got it. Okay, thank you for that. We don't need to give it any more airtime than just that. That's fine. Maybe this would be a good time, though, to define a protein modified. I'm going to say it wrong, aren't I?
Yeah.
Please say it for me.
Protein sparing modified fasting.
Thank you.
So with that, it still is a ketogenic diet and it can be a carnivore diet too. So we're focusing on your protein goal, most likely going above that and lowering the fat and carbs to a minimum. You're getting about 20 to 30 grams of fat, enough for your hormones, all of that to absorb vitamins A, D, and K, and carbohydrates really low. We might have a few little herbs and spices in there to maintain flavor, but you're getting enough protein so you don't lose lean mass as you can lose quite a bit of fat at one time. Um, we had one of my clients was named Tyler, and he was 650 pounds, and he lost 100 pounds in 2 months on PSMF because he had
Wow.
a lot of fuel to use. He had a huge muscle mass because just thinking, standing up, sitting down, those quads are working hard. So,
Oh, got it. Okay. Thank you for helping to define that. I wanted to ask on both sides of that coin, though. So are you ever concerned with somebody getting too much protein? You hear that, if you get too much, your body's going to turn it into sugar, your blood glucose is going to go up, your A1C might go up. What do you think about when you hear those terms?
so when they tell me that their blood sugar is going up, what is it going up to? So during my latest presentation, I actually talked a few vegans into eating protein. Um, but I talked
Nice.
about how if you go to the doctor and you get a fasting glucose and it's 85, and then you get your fasting insulin and it's in the red line, your body's working really hard to keep that glucose in a good number. Okay. That can be when you're eating a very high fat diet. Your glucose looks normal, but your insulin's pegged because your fat cells are growing and they're stuffed. Your insulin can't, that net can't hold it in anymore. So I say, okay, let's reverse that. And I want you to do high protein. Let's lower the fat down. And their blood sugar goes to maybe 110, but their insulin is in the green. It's like cruising along, the cruise control. It's not working hard at all. This is considered the HOMA IR. And that's the number everybody should be concerned with, not their fasting blood glucose. Because it's
Yeah.
kind of just telling a very small piece. And yes, it's going to take more energy to process protein into making muscles, into making your heart tissue. It's going to take a little bit more blood sugar, but it's not like eating a Kit Kat, you know? And to say that chicken is the same as sugar is absolutely ridiculous. So this gluconeogenesis, that is what enables ketosis to happen. And when I started this journey, which we can talk about later if you want to, about building muscle, gaining some weight, my husband said, please add some carbs because you are in such a gluconeogenesis state. If you aren't eating any carbs, like in a carnivore diet, your body's going to use that protein for fuel because you need some glucose for your brain. You need glucose for your thyroid. You need glucose for certain parts of your body. And if you're not eating it, it has to convert protein into that. This is not a bad thing. This is what enables the carnivore diet to happen. So he's saying instead of using your precious protein for your muscles or for, the glucose, let it use it for your muscles. And so I added some watermelon.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, let's park that. I definitely want to talk about that a little bit more here in a little bit. Going back to protein, do you have any concerns of like a certain level that somebody is getting too much protein?
Only if they're doing like protein shakes. If they're drinking liquid protein, that could be, an issue. But if you're chewing your calories, there's no way you're getting too much protein.
Yeah, it would be really tough. I mean, I just think if high protein were such a big problem that people say like it's a problem in your kidneys, your liver, or whatever, like where are the piles of bodybuilders out there that are just
Okay.
like dying? You know what I mean?
Let's talk about how protein is bad for your kidneys. So just like, when you do a bicep curl, it builds your bicep, right? You need protein to help your kidneys get stronger. If you don't eat protein, it's going to cause them to get weak. And my grandpa had kidney dialysis. It wasn't because he ate too much protein. It was because he was type 2 diabetic and ate so much sugar.
Yeah. Well said. Okay, thank you. Let's talk more about the fat now. This is again like a lever we're talking about here. Like how do we move that up and down? This may be overly obvious, but how do you know that somebody is not getting enough fat and they need to actually increase the fat that they're eating?
Um, they may lose their cycle. They may have low vitamin D, even despite maybe taking vitamin D supplements. Um, I don't know. Most people, I don't know anybody who's not getting enough fat
Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
because the dietary need for that is so low that we don't even understand how low that is. You know, it's like 20 grams a day that you need to absorb vitamins A, D, E, and K and have your hormones. And even when I was writing recipes for protein sparing modified fast using egg whites, chicken breast, I was always over that 20 grams.
got it. Okay. And is that because most of us have so much excess fat already that we can stand to burn off that fat and we don't necessarily need to just continually add more fat to the diet?
Yes, but also foods in nature have fat. So when you're eating a steak, it's never just protein. There's fat in that. And I often think of what when I'm hunting, I often think about in what world did our ancestors get a butter churner out after they killed an animal? That's just so unnatural. But they would eat all the parts of the animal, like the organs and stuff. Um, I just don't think we eat that way anymore.
Okay, yeah, I agree. Would things like brain fog, poor mental clarity be a sign that somebody's not getting enough fat and they may want to boost it a little bit more?
Um, Maybe, but primarily what I work with is postmenopausal women, and that's definitely low estrogen. I don't care how much fat you eat, you're not going to make your ovaries talk again once you're past a certain age.
Okay, gotcha. And then too much fat. Would too much fat be weight gain or a weight loss kind of stall? Would that be the most obvious thing that somebody's getting way too much fat?
Yeah, I know some people who have liver pain. Um, those, but weight gain is a big one too.
Okay. And then when you're looking through somebody who should be cutting back on fat, are you finding what are the sources of fat that can easily be cut back on? Is it the dairy, the butter, the things we put in our coffee in the morning, that sort of thing? Is that kind of like the first thing you try to target?
I just say cut all dairy, and that's going to be the heavy cream in your coffee. That's going to be the butter on your steak. That's going to be, the if you're doing desserts, the cheesecake, the whatever, all the dairy, 100% dairy. Eggs are not dairy. Some people are confused about that.
Yeah.
But just all I do is say cut out the dairy, and it usually works.
You're making this out to be very, very simple. I love this. It's not a lot of things to put too much complicated thought into. Just keeping things really simple will get most people to where they need to be.
Well, dairy is a very people in this community poo-poo gluten. They're like, "Oh yeah, gluten allergies, don't eat any gluten, this and that." Dairy is a more common allergy than gluten is. And dairy also will trigger that dopamine response in your brain to have more. So that's why a lot of people say, "I can't cut out the cheese."
Yeah. Well,
So
especially when you live in places where you live, where the cheese is absolutely insanely delicious. It's very challenging.
we go to the gas station and we go to my parents' cabin and it's way up in the middle of the woods. And you go to this gas station and there's cheese curds. You know what a cheese curd is?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
They're not even refrigerated. They're so fresh, came from the factory. They don't refrigerate them and they're sitting out and they're like the squeaky cheese. And yeah, they're easy to overeat.
My wife took me there for the first time a few years ago, and I remember her telling me all of that. I'm like, "What do you mean gas station? You're going to stop at a gas station? Like, isn't there like a really nice like cheese factory that Wisconsin's famous for?" She's like, "No, just go to any gas
Mhm.
station and trying that stuff." I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is the best food I've ever had in my life."
I know, right? It's funny.
I would be totally addicted to that for sure. And then if we go over to the carbohydrates, how do you help somebody determine how strict or how liberal they could be with their carbohydrate intake?
Again, it would be how much muscle mass and how much you work out, lift. That's going to give you a higher carbohydrate allowance if you want it, or it could also be your fat. So protein, you can't store that, and it's not a good energy source. So you want to get enough protein to make the building blocks of your beautiful skin, hair, nails, your body. But then you need to pick fat or carbohydrates. So picking one is is advantageous. So if somebody doesn't want to do high fat, but they need more energy, they're going to do a higher carbohydrate. But like somebody with like a gallbladder issue, more carbohydrates might be advantageous to them because higher fat is not great.
Got it.
So depending on how lean they are and stuff like that. But it's really personal choice. And I do warn people, the more carbohydrates you have, the more appetite you're going to have, because how hunger happens is a falling blood sugar. And so this is why you can go to a Chinese buffet, eat all the sugar chicken and white rice. Your blood sugar is super high. Once it starts coming down, you're like, oh yeah, I can have some ice cream. It's not because your belly's empty. It's because your blood sugar started to come down. And that's where the danger of too much carbohydrate is. And it also triggers a lot of addiction and things like that. But I also see dairy and butter being an addiction too. So
Got it. Okay. How have you evolved your thinking as far as, the different types of carbohydrates? And I'll expand that to say even like sweeteners, whether you call them like natural sweeteners or, unnatural sweeteners, whatever the difference there is. Like how do you help people determine like what carbohydrates they use, especially in like different recipes? How have you evolved your thinking there?
well, I primarily use allulose, and I personally don't use it a lot. Like my kid's birthday, yes, so we'll use it for a cheesecake after I'm talking about dairy. Um, but allulose is actually found to help with blood sugar, help with insulin levels. It's a natural GLP-1. So are you familiar with Dr. Nadir Ali?
Yeah, of course.
I love him. So he just done a lot of videos about how you have 5 grams of allulose in the morning, you will naturally eat less throughout the day.
Did that
Crazy.
surprise you to learn some of that research? So like Dr. Richard Johnson is like all of a sudden like the sugar, fructose and sugar and all this stuff, but all of a sudden there's just like sugar that's like actually beneficial. I still have a tough time wrapping my brain around that.
Yeah, I know. It's really fat. I mean, there's definitely some downsides. If you do too much, you're going to have some stomach discomfort, maybe diarrhea. So that's why it's not something you want to binge on like you could with sugar. But there's definitely benefits to that. And so that's why I primarily use that. And it's 0 calories, zero, sugar. It's not going to, people mistakenly believe it's going to cause their insulin to go up or blood sugar to go up. It does not. What are you pairing it with? Coffee? Yes, that will do it. Coffee is going to do it. It's not the sweetener. Um, so I find it, if you are going to go at the holidays are coming up, right? And you have a family that has a spread of desserts, right? If you don't have an option for you, you're probably going to grab a Christmas cookie or something like that. So for me, especially when I was starting out, now I don't care at all, but I would always bring a dessert. And most people really loved them. They're like, oh, this flourless chocolate torte is delicious, right? I don't need the sugar anymore. So for me, it's to encourage others, but it was also for me to be able to stay on track and not be triggered by the other stuff.
Yeah. And that's why I love the variety. Something I also wanted to ask you about the variety of the different like recipes you come up with. If somebody got, one of your older cookbooks, they might find like lots of different ingredients and a little bit longer process and that sort of thing. And you also, you've done content in this last year about like, 5-minute meals and keeping things really, really simple. How do you leverage each of those when you're giving recommendations for people?
Well, I'll tell this story. I can handle constructive criticism really well. If you're just mean, go away, right? But when I wrote my first book, my first published book, people were like, Maria, the recipes are great, but they're too hard. And then I had children and I understood what they meant. I don't have 30 minutes to do a recipe. I need 5 minutes. And so that's kind of where I'm at in life, where I think most people are at in life. They want something quick. If it's in the oven for longer, whatever, but I want it quick to be made right now. And so that's kind of what my goal has been in most of my recipes, even like if I wrote a dessert recipe. So for my birthday, I made a ricotta cheesecake, and it's only ricotta cheese, eggs, a little lemon juice, sweetener, and like that's it. and it's better than any cheesecake that I've ever had before. But I don't know. I'd rather be on a bicycle and riding bike rather than staying in the kitchen, you know?
Yeah, good call. I used to think I loved cooking as well, and once you kind of get onto a simpler diet, you realize like, no, I didn't really love cooking. Like, I don't like working out. I just want to get in, get it done, and go enjoy life doing something more
Right.
enjoyable. And yeah, I heard you tell the story of how you developed that recipe on Max's podcast, a low carb consultant. It was almost a little bit of serendipity on that last recipe you mentioned.
Oh, the ricotta cheesecake?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a bunch of friends over where I met on my retreats. And I ordered ricotta cheese and not knowing that it was a 3 pound tub. And I had like three of these. So I was like, we have to use these up somehow. And so I just threw them into a bowl with some eggs. And I always recommend adding salt to your desserts because it's a flavor enhancer. And we didn't have any salt and I didn't have any lemon juice because I rented a cabin. And someone's like, hey, let's put some lemon element in there. I was like, brilliant. And so we just mixed it up and baked it off, and it turned out really, really great.
Wow, that's amazing. That's not how you know you're a natural. I was going to ask you some of your favorite recipes, but I'm going to change it and say, what are your three most popular recipes that you're the most known for?
Probably the protein bread, the protein sparing bread, or people call it carnivore bread, whatever. It's just uh, the egg whites where you rip it, add egg white protein powder, some salt, and break that off. That can turn into, you know, so many good, delicious recipes, a sandwich or whatever. Sometimes you could see that in my carry-on when I'm traveling on a long flight, sandwich made with that. Um, I think the protein noodle lasagna is probably another one. I created that into a carnivore lasagna too. Um, and probably the chocolate pudding. Are you familiar with that?
I am. Yeah, I'm familiar with it. Can you tell the listener about it?
So when we first adopted the boys, we still didn't have any money, and one of the cheapest foods was eggs, right? I don't know if they are anymore, but they were really cheap when the boys were little, and I kind of made a rule that one of our meals has to be eggs. All four of us, one of the meals has to be eggs. And my youngest, Kai, hated eggs, and he still doesn't like them. He just despised eggs. I made eggs a million different ways, and he didn't like them. And so I looked at these hard-boiled eggs sitting there, and I looked at my blender, and I tossed hard-boiled eggs into a blender, a can of coconut milk, a little cocoa powder, vanilla, cinnamon, blended it up, and created this chocolate mousse that I kept for a secret for many years. And I'm going to do a name drop here, but I made it for Halle Berry, and she's like, I am not eating that. And once I got her to eat it, she's like, this is the best chocolate mousse I've ever had. So it's just cool to see things unfold and stuff I was afraid to even talk about, even just like a recipe or a personal thing of information about myself. Once I opened up and told people, they were so much more open to it, whether it be a recipe or something I'm dealing with. I was always such a quiet person, and I still probably will always be. But I find that giving a little piece of myself, people are much more, I don't know, kind than I thought they'd be.
Yeah, that's encouraging to hear. Again, we squabble a lot in our community, and we can be quite harsh at times, which is tough. But by and large, I do find that people in this community are very accepting and happy. And maybe this is a perfect segue to talk about your recent journey into gaining more weight, gaining more muscle, what that's been like for you. We can go into whatever level of detail you want, but yeah, what has that journey been like, and how's it going?
Um, uh, well, I had a setback. I went on a trip, so I was invited to speak in Egypt and South Africa. Um, and it was about a month in between each one. So we were gone for about a month, and in between we went on safari, and I was bit 117 times by a poisonous spider or spiders. I don't know how many there were.
Wow.
So I got pretty sick, and I had to take I mean, I was in Botswana. I was in the middle of nowhere, and they said, you got to take these medications, and if you're not better in the morning, we have to airlift you out. I mean, poisonous spider is not something to mess with. Um, And when you're in a country where food is scarce, I don't want to take more food. And so I uh I lost a lot of progress. But I'm getting back there. Still not there. Um yeah, it's hard. It's harder than I thought it'd be.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad you are making progress, and it's tough. When your husband encouraged you to, consume more carbohydrates, how challenging was that for you? I think all of us, I think, that are in this world develop a bit of, body dysmorphia, and I can see that in myself, and like orthorexia, and like, we become, really terrified of carbohydrates. Was that a challenge for you to add back in?
Mhm. Um, so when I got really sick in February, I ended up in the emergency room in the ICU 3 times. And when I got back from that, Craig said, "You are eating honey. I'll get you the best possible honey out there. I'm gonna get you some natural maple syrup, and you're gonna eat it or you're out." And so it was an ultimatum, but it was out of love. And as much as he wanted me to gain weight, it wasn't until, what, 5 months later, I was on a walk with my best friend, and I told her about what happened, um, and she stopped walking, and she said, "Do you wanna die?" And she said it again, and she just started crying, and she was so kind about how she said, "Do you remember when we would," 'cause how I met her, we were on a sailing team, and when you're on a sailing team, you want really lightweight people that are really strong. And she said, "'Member how strong you were?" And she was just really calm and soft, telling me, like, "You were so ripped, like, let's get back to that." And it wasn't until, like, as much as, I love my husband, all of his words, I wouldn't change for him.
I hear
And it
this
was
story
really honest.
I hear this story all the time, and I really feel for loved ones who are seeing what's going on and want to say something but don't know how. What do you think it was about her words, that conversation, that really reached you in a way that, yeah, like, it's not like you were ignoring your husband and, ignoring what he was saying, but it didn't connect in the same way for you. What do you think it was?
Hearing it from an outsider, whether it be about gaining or losing weight, I think hearing it from somebody other than family is very powerful because my parents too, they nag me all the time. Um, she's such a she's such a hippie. She doesn't do social media, and I've never seen her cry. And I think that was just like really whoa, you know. Um, and I once I started gaining, it was crazy how fast I could get back to weightlifting. Like I used to lift a lot, and I was think that was so mentally empowering to me that wanted me to keep going. Um, so when I came back after the trip to Africa, I was really sad about how weak I was. Um, yeah, there was a lot of things that happened. There was food poisoning. It was
Oh my goodness.
it was a crazy trip, but um, I am just trying to be more compassionate to myself.
Good. Um, yeah, thank you again for sharing all that. I know how difficult it is, and um, maybe I don't know how difficult it is. It's just I really appreciate your vulnerability there. When we talk about your journey into strength training, what kind of style of strength training tends to be the most beneficial, for you or somebody who's trying to, bulk up or gain weight, because it's kind of a fine line. Like, you want to be able to exercise and lift and move, but you also probably don't want to be burning like an excess of calories when you're doing it. Like, how do you manage your strength training program?
Um, my background is, I mean, I love this class called Body Pump. Are you familiar with that?
maybe I know the style. It's something that a lot of people talk about, but yeah, feel free to elaborate.
So it was at the YMCA. They would play like a song for 5 minutes and he would do bicep curls, right? And so for me, I really like that style because it just kind of brought me back good memories. But I knew that I don't necessarily want to do endurance stuff, right? So, but I also don't have a lot of time. And so instead of just like sitting there and wasting time in between sets, I know this probably sounds stupid, but I set a timer. So, or I had a song on for 5 minutes, and I get 5 minutes to focus on biceps, but I lift as heavy as I can. And then once it's almost to failure, I take a rest, but I also know I only have 5 minutes to do it. So it, and women can do this more than men because they don't need as much time to recover. So I'm able to do that, but then I'm in and out of the gym and I switch off body parts. So I'll do like upper body one day, lower body the next day. And I know some people are like, that's too much, but I got to tell you, I used to run twice a day. I was marathon running and I would do, I mean, 20 miles a day sometimes. And that was too much. I was tired. This doesn't wipe me out. It just kind of wakes me up. And if I'm not feeling it that day, I'll do something a little bit and I'll jump in the sauna. Um, and sauna was something that I was forbidden to do for a while. We have a sauna and Craig took the power away from it for a long time because it was just making me sicker.
Gotcha. Well, the strength training protocol seems like it would suit your personality and give you the hit you're looking for, but also get you to that intensity that is needed to build muscle. That with the protein intake, it seems like a pretty good plan. So,
But
again,
I wish I really realized when I was such a runner. I want people to know if you are a runner, you need more protein than your lean mass is saying because you're utilizing so much of that. And I know I lost a lot of muscle mass when I was running so much.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, again, thank you so much for sharing all of that. We really, really appreciate it. I think it needs to be talked about more in the community because I think it's more pervasive than we know. So, again, thank you very much. As you mentioned, you are very, very busy. Can you tell us what you've been working on these days, and especially what I know just brings you so much life and joy in your life, which are the retreats that you run? Can you tell us about what you have going on these days?
Well, I don't actually put these on. A woman reached out to me. They're like, Maria, ciao, Maria. You need to do a retreat in Italy and teach people about keto and carnivore. I was like, what? What is she talking about? And so I gave her my number and we talked, and it's been about 10 years, maybe even more since we did our first one. And it's literally, I mean, I don't have time to make a lot of friends and go to dinner with people. We homeschool kids. I just don't have a lot of time. So when I go on these retreats, I just kick back and I've made my best friends in my life on my retreats. And we're going to go to Croatia, which we've done 2 years ago. And it was one of my favorite. If you like water, if you love snorkeling, if you love sailing, Croatia is the place to be. We went snorkeling together and there was a chef with us, Chef Vito. He's come on 3 of my retreats. He dove down and grabbed a sea urchin and we were eating fresh sea urchin from the sea. It's so
Wow.
cool.
Wow.
And then we're going to go back to Ischia. It's an island in Italy that nobody's heard of. And it's like being in Rome, but with not too many people. It's so amazing. I love these retreats so much.
Wow. I was just going to say these places are a little bit off the grid. I know Croatia, the secret's kind of out a little bit, but yeah, you're kind of outing some pretty awesome vacation spots. Maybe it'll be a little bit more popular after this drops.
I
But
know, that's okay.
that's great. Well, I really enjoy the time that I get to spend with you. And like I said, you're such a gem in the community. You really help a lot of people. I look at somebody like Melissa Lujan, who spent time, in Hal Kramer's Paradise for Parents. She had pretty moderate to severe dementia, and she turned it around. And a big reason that she turned it around was because of you, because you were there to help her and provide her recipes and support. And that's not the only story. There's story after story of you guys doing that in the community. You and Craig are just some of my favorite people, some of my favorite presenters, and we just really love and respect all of you guys. So thank you so very much for everything that you do. Thank you for taking time to be on our show. Where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work and sign up for these awesome retreats?
The easiest places to go is ketomaria.com. You'll find the retreat information. You'll find, if you go all the way to the bottom, there's free YouTube, there's free Facebook groups. You don't have to pay me a dime, but ketomaria.com.
Excellent. We will link that in the show notes. And like I said, we're just so grateful for you and all the work that you guys do tirelessly to get this message out and help so many people out there. So thank you so very much. Really, really appreciate it. I know how busy you are. So thank you for taking time out of your busy life to be on our show today. We really appreciate it.
It was an honor. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.